Private Nicholas Payne reporting for duty, sirs and ma'ams. Actually, I did have a smaller plasticky one somewhere. Okay, hello everybody, Nick here, and welcome to this review of the Unit audio series released in 2004 and 2005 by Big Finish Productions. Now, I've currently talked about one of these audios, The Coup, released in November 2004, along with Silver Linings, a Bernie Summerfield story that has not yet been made downloadable by Big Finish for free or otherwise. But released as the two were released on CD in 2004 November, as a Doctor Who magazine special gift. I've already talked about the Coup in my free Big Finish audios review that I did in 2018. You can go and check those out. I wasn't a huge fan of that story, but I did like it. However, now, I haven't re-listened to it, but coming into this series, I knew what that one was about, so I was ready to see what the series Unit would be like after I bought those as part of one of the sales they had last summer for the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who audios. And so last month, February, pretty early last month, to be honest. I really should have done this video out earlier in February, when they were in my head, but we were doing Doctor Who Series 12 videos at the time, so yeah, oh well. But yeah, Unit the series went in and came out loving this series. This series is a brilliant audio series. For the record, I'm just talking about the 5 if you include the Coup, audios released between November 2004, November if you include the Coup, December if you don't, and June 2005. So I'm not talking about Unit Dominion, nor any new series Unit audios, or Short Trips audio, Unit story that appears in World of Doctor Who, which follows on from a short trip. Is it short? No, it's Companion Chronicle. So yeah, just these four episodes and a quick discussion into the Coup, just a quick tie-in with that one. But I was actually surprised how much that story actually ties in with the main series. I mean, yeah, they'd reference it. Sure, there's a reference in part one, the first episode. But I was kind of surprised how much it actually ties into later in the series. Okay, first of all, episode 1, Time Heals, released in December 2004, a month after the Coup. And this story, this series it's more Big Finish and more for adult audiences anyway. But this story is one of the earlier ones to say it has adult material. And yeah, this is definitely a more adult or teenage or orientated audios, as opposed to some of the Doctor Who ones, which you could be okay with letting children listen to, perhaps, if on some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. But there is the adult themes advisory on this series that you do get with ones like Torchwood. Anyway, Time Heals is a really great opening, as following on from the Coup, we've got Unit operating, but they have to hand over to this organisation known as ISIS, not to be confused with the terrorist organisation of the same name. I'm actually kind of surprised they got away with that. But as things are happening, as they transporting weapons, I think nuclear weapons, across the country, the weapons get stolen, and their commander, Colonel Brimacombe Wood, played by David Tennant in the final audio, who was also in the Unbound story Sympathy for the Devil, although that's a different universe. I think that character died in that story at the very end, or was caught up in something at the very end. But it's basically the same character, but from the universe that had the Third Doctor sent into exile on Earth in the 70s, as opposed to the universe that had the Third Doctor not sent to Earth in the 70s, but instead in the late 90s. But yeah, Brimacombe Woods, he's gone missing. We'll find him again in part 4. But in the meantime, Colonel Emily Chaudhry from the Coup takes command, and Siri O'Neill is outstanding in all 5 episodes, including the Coup. She is fucking awesome. Her character is also great. Chaudhry is a really enjoyable and really likable character, and Neil just brings so much personality and joy to the character, and you really feel the hardships she goes through throughout the series, but also the fun she has throughout time. This is, to be honest, this audio series kind of feels like a prototype for Torchwood in a way, actually. Unintentionally, probably, but to me, the character interactions and the world events that they're going through actually feels more like Torchwood than Unit. There's not really so much alien threats. Most aliens we get is probably the Silurians in the Coup. But nevertheless, I think this. But that being said, I still think these stories are really great. This story where we have all these accidents and events happening across the country, time just jumps a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, leading to accidents and disasters and events. And what's tying these together seems to be these scientific experiments by the scientist and his young assistant, who turns out to be working for ISIS, as we'll find out later on in the series. That they kidnapped this professor, or they've hired this professor, and they're doing time experiments or something, and it's causing all of these accidents. For some reason, ISIS seem to be wanting to cause more terrorism than actual terrorists in this series. Instead of being the ones defending the UK, there seems to be this whole conspiracy with the organisation to try and destroy the UK. Or at least destroy certain people within the UK, as we'll find out more about in the last 2 episodes. But episode 1 is a great introduction to this. Well, actually, the Coup was more of an introduction, but episode 1 takes the series in the direction it's focusing on. It starts off the conspiracy story arc, although there were elements from the last episode, the Coup, the prologue episode, the Coup. Also, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, once again played by Nicholas Courtney, amazing as well. He has a few appearances throughout this episode and episode 4, and he's just absolutely amazing, as per usual. And the character gets a couple of good stuff to do. I think he's at his best in the Coup out of the 3 stories he's in, but he still gets some great stuff to do in this story and in the final episode. Next up, we have episode 2, which is called Snakehead. Yeah, Snakehead. This is the odd one out of the series. Out of the 5 episodes, this one's the odd one out, as it sees Chaudhry and her new boss, Colonel Robert Dalton, who takes over from Brimkin Wood in episode 1. And by the way, he's a brilliant character, as is Lieutenant Hoffman. They're brilliant characters, and the actors do brilliant jobs in their roles. But when I was thinking it's a bit more like Torchwood than Unit, with the character interactions, we get some really great character interactions between Chaudhry and Dalton in the second story. Whilst the overall series arc and the conspiracy stuff is more in line of a Torchwood story rather than a Unit one, especially if it's post series 2. I'm really enjoying Chaudhry and Dalton's interactions in this story, and then they go off to fight a vampire creature. Not necessarily an alien vampire, just a vampire coming from Ukraine, which is being brought over accidentally by immigrants who have come to work as snakeheads, which are digging up shells and fossils on the beach of Southend-on-Sea. Which, by the way, I live in Bishop Stortford in Hertfordshire, so Southend-on-Sea in Essex isn't too far away. So that's quite fun. That's interesting. I've actually thought they were in Scotland to begin with, but it turns out they're in Southend, so they're not too far away from central London. Despite Robert Dalton's moaning about how he's not back in London, he's not really a fan of being outside the city. But he's still fun, and the story has some really good stuff involving archaeology, vampires, snakeheads, and Chinese food restaurants. I think most of the immigrants are Chinese. Possibly. There's definitely a Chinese restaurant in there, I think, that they're going to have lunch at one point. Yeah, this is a good story. It's a bit out of place of the series concerning the series arc of the series. It's a bit different. It's more like you have this start of the conspiracy, then you go off to have another adventure, and then you come back to this conspiracy. So things have obviously gotten out of control whilst Chaudhry and Dalton were over in Southend dealing with this vampire character. And whilst that's been happening, the conspiracy has been revving up in time for the 3rd episode. Episode 3, The Longest Night, actually feels like the biggest episode in this series, despite being only the penultimate episode, and the third of 4 episodes. It feels like the biggest. There's a lot going on. There is a massive terrorism attack. Well, I say lots of suicide bombers supposedly going off, but it feels like a massive terrorist attack on London, basically, and basically the conspiracy, a homegrown conspiracy, is to spread fear and distrust between different parts of the community, e.g., people who are not considered British. Holy shit, this is quite racial and political. This series, it deals with the themes of a perfect Britain, England for the English. Um, yeah, it's quite political and pretty shocking and violent. Hoffman, who's a great character in the first episode and a pretty fun character in scenes in the second episode, he has a few good scenes here when he's on a date and he dies following one of these attacks. He's chased down by one of the assassins posing as a policeman who kills his girlfriend, who survives the bomb blast, and the policeman kills him. Um, Meanwhile, what's his name? Francis Curry, who appears in the first audio and also in the Coup, he's brainwashed to attempt to kill Colonel Chaudhry at Westminster Cathedral or Abbey. But Chaudhry then realizes some people are kind of under control, or they're being forced to do this. Like one of the prime minister's, I think it's the deputy prime minister, an Indian woman who kills herself in order to protect her family from being killed. This sparks anger and rage at because I think she's Indian or Muslim or both, which sparks anger amongst them. Whilst there's also anger towards them, and people attack their mosques, including innocent women and children, as questioned by one of the reporters. And then one of the attackers goes, "He's a sympathizer," and they attack him just because. So this story has quite a lot to say about fear and hating this and distrusting each other, like how we might there'll be fear and hatred towards Muslims or people from Iraq or Afghanistan or other countries in the Middle East just because they're from that countries or just because they're that religion. And there were terrorists that committed some terrorist attacks, e.g., 9/11, who were that religion or from those countries or whatever. And now everybody just automatically hates anybody from those countries or in that religion. And I think some of that still is very relevant to late 2010s, early 2020s, as much as it was in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s. It's still a very strong debated topic. And you have a sneaky government officials, not the prime minister, but sneaky government officials or government organizations pulling the strings behind it. And it turns out that it's the prime minister's aide that's behind all of this. He wants to return to a pure English civilization. I say civilization. Meanwhile, there's also a breakout at the then still open Holloway prison. It closed in 2016, hence why I said still open. And it turns out that Colonel what's her name? She's in the Coup. Winnington, Colonel Andrea Winnington, from the Coup, who tried to assassinate the Silurian, and as part of this fear that the Silurians are dangerous and might want to take over the world, whilst in the Coup, it actually showing a diplomatic Silurian and wanting to work with the humans, something that the Doctor wanted to do with Doctor and the Silurians. And in the Coup's case, the Brigadier thinks, actually, that's a good idea. Maybe I was wrong to kill them back in the 70s. This time, now that they extending the hand of friendship, perhaps we should extend it back. But ISIS obviously disagree, which leads to Winnington attempting to kill the Silurian, and then she's held in Holloway whilst probably awaiting trial, possibly for her actions. But she escapes to take part in this event, as it turns out that the advisor is actually her illegitimate father, who actually kind of disappointed in her and attempts to have her try and kill Chaudhry, so that Chaudhry would then get the upper hand and kill Winnington, and then public opinion of Chaudhry would go down. She is the public relations and political correspondent officer in unit, after all, plus temporary leader during episode 1. And episode 4, comes to think of it, due to the ending of this episode. Ultimately, the AIDS plan fails. Winnington fails in killing Chaudhry, and Chaudhry does not kill her. And instead, they confront him, and Dalton also joins them to confront them. Chaudhry was uncertain whether Dalton was involved due to him having worked with Winnington before, but it turns out, in the end, Dalton is indeed the hero we all loved him to be throughout the series. In the end, the aide commits suicide by blowing up Downing Street, with Dalton still inside, whilst he gets the Prime Minister, Chaudhry, and Winnington out. Winnington then escapes. So after that, we then jump into The Wasting, the last episode of the series, with after Dalton's funeral, Chaudhry's back in command, and now she's up against Winnington. She's up against ISIS. She's not taking any more shit. She's going to find Birmingham Wood and try and put everything back to normal. Stop ISIS from causing any more terrorist attacks and bring them down for good. And this last episode is also really good. I think it's a very interesting story. Got some really great stuff going in. It's not as big as episode 3, but it is a worthy finale. And there is a couple good twists and turns, such as, spoiler alert, it actually turns out Birmingham Wood actually was not kidnapped. It was a whole conspiracy to hide him being, in fact, the one who was in charge of all of this all the time. He's the head of ISIS. He's the one behind all of this. And the scariest thing is that he actually believed he was doing the right thing. Most of these villains probably thought they were doing the right thing, but their methods were just so extreme. But with Birmingham Wood, he literally believes it, as opposed to thinking it. But yeah, it was a great twist in the series, although it does make it feel a bit all out of place, with the whole talking about how they loved him as a great leader. And whilst he was a bit of a dick in Sympathy of the Devil, the Birmingham Wood in that story was still a good guy, more or less, and that's how he was played up to be here. He was really fun, and it seemed like him and Chaudhry had some sort of a maybe had a thing going. Same with throughout the rest of the series with Chaudhry and Dalton, perhaps. Poor Chaudhry, she's not very good when it comes to romantic feelings, is she? The guys she has feelings for are either turning out to be villains or they're dying. Anyway, so Chaudhry has to lead unit troops in a potentially becoming criminals, so fight back against ISIS and to stop them from destroying the country or whatever they were planning to do. I can't remember, it's been a while. But it's a final fight back against ISIS, with help from Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, who also comes in at the end to help a bit more out. He also has a bit more to do at the end. And yeah, in the end, they managed to defeat Birmingham Wood, and they managed to arrest him and Winnington. And they're able to sort the country out once, and they're able to close down ISIS, and everything goes back to normal. And UNIT is now no longer the criminal organization, but rather ISIS. Actually, yeah, that reminds me, ISIS were framing UNIT for committing some murders as well. Hence why UNIT became public enemy number 1 for a bit. But yeah, that's UNIT the series, and it is a shame that another series of these audios didn't come out, nor any more of these. The next UNIT thing outside of the Doctor Who stories would be UNIT Dominion, which is a completely different story. Following that would be the regular UNIT, the new series audios released for the last couple of years. But as for this miniseries, I think this was a really great miniseries, and definitely more catering to audiences that would be fans of Torchwood when that series started on television just over a year later from when this series ended. And this last one came out in June 2005. Surprisingly, it wasn't surprisingly the first two are December 04, January 05, but then the next two were March 05 and then June 05, also November 04 for the Coup. So the dates have been a bit all over the place here, but relatively within 6 to 7 months overall. But anyway, so the series, I enjoyed the series quite a lot. I think the characters are brilliant. Emily Chaudhry is fucking awesome, and Siri O'Neill is fucking awesome as Chaudhry. Loved Dalton, I loved his actor. Hoffman was a great character, and it was a shame he died in so early in part 3. I can see why Dalton died for plot reasons, but Hoffman, I think, he could have at least maybe died later on in the episode. David Tennant is fantastic as Birmingham Wood, despite the twist, which actually is a pretty decent twist, to be honest, although it does come a bit of a surprise following Sympathy for the Devil. But still, David Tennant is fantastic, and the character is well done. And Sarah Carver is also great as Andrea Winnington in her 2 episodes, plus in The Coup as well. And of course, Nicholas Courtney as Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, outstanding as per usual. And also, I enjoyed the Silurian stuff in the Coup. I gave that one a 7 out of 10, but maybe on a rewatch that might go up. But as for these episodes, Time Healed is a fantastic start to this series and has some fantastic themes and sets the ball rolling for what we can expect the rest of the series to be like. A well-deserved 9 out of 10 for that story. Snakehead is a nice little break from the storyline we're going for and a nice little example of what future unit stories could have been if we've had another series. We could have just had these sort of adventures now and again. And like I say, it definitely has a bit more of a Torchwood feel that would come in 2006. Snakehead gets an 8 out of 10 for me. It is a pretty strong story. I don't think I think it is the weakest of the 4 main stories. I think the Coup's the weakest overall, but this is the weakest of the 4 main ones. But still a worthy story to listen to. The strongest story, on the other hand, goes to the next episode, The Longest Night. This is just a fantastic political and fight for survival story with units having to take control of the situation, having to fight back against political and racial and other discriminatory problems, where these homegrown terrorism attacks are causing the public to shift their opinion onto certain people as some sort of way to make the country great again. An easy 10 out of 10. Finally, we have The Wasting, a satisfactory ending, although I can't remember a huge amount of it, but it certainly puts the unit characters into another difficult position with some great twists and turns and some amazing performances throughout, not just in this episode, but throughout the series. But wrapping up this episode, they did a really great job, and I think it was really well handled, as was the rest of the series, but this one was a good ending. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I think it was a good episode. I was going to give it a 9, but I thought, I can't remember a huge amount of it. Plus, whilst the Brimkenwood's twist is shocking and well done, does it actually fit with the character from Sympathy from the Devil that I heard not too long before this story, about 2 months before? But still, really well done anyway, and I thought it was a very good ending to the series. And if I was to rank this series, number 5 would be The Coup, number 4 would be Snakehead, number 3 would be The Wasting, number 2 would be Time Heals, and number 1 would be The Longest Night. So yeah, this is a really great series, and I totally recommend checking it out if you're a Unit fan or you enjoy stuff like Torchwood. Then this is definitely some audios you would like. It's only 4 hour-long-esque episodes, hour to an hour and a quarter, plus the Coup, which is just under half an hour. So it's only 4 to 4.5, 4 3/4 of your time. No problem. Yeah, and if you like this, maybe you want to go on to Unit Dominion. I'll probably try and get that. Might even get the CD when I get more money. Not working at the moment, thank you, coronavirus. So yeah, maybe at a later point, as well as also to progress into the new series audios, which actually do what this series didn't do and actually have more than one series. But that series also deals with aliens. This one, I think the only aliens in this series, like I said, are the Silurians, and they come to help at the end of episode 4 by preparing a virus for a plague that's spreading across the country. Oh yeah, that happened in episode 4 as well. Forgot about that. There's a plague going around as well. It might have been plague victims that were shot to frame Unit. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm remembering more stuff from episode 4. But yeah, great series. Really, really enjoyable. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.